Hamia salam. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see all of you here. Nice to meet you. My name is Samir, and I'm a senior React Native developer here at Andersen. And today we are having a meetup on the topic from student to developer, what I wish I knew at the start. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. By the way, if you can't hear me, just let me know. Some welcoming words. We will talk about things that you should pay attention to when learning. We will talk about the right approach to learning, so some tips and advice on how you should approach your learning. We will talk about common mistakes and misconceptions that usually junior developers tend to have in their career. We will have a separate section on interviews, which is a crucial part on applying to pretty much any job on the market. And there will be a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, we can discuss them there. So first of all, again, it's nice to see all of you here. You might have a question in your head. Who am I and what makes me qualified to give you advice on this topic? I can say that I once was in a position just like pretty much any of you, I would say. Maybe I even had some disadvantage compared to some of you because of my education, because I didn't have education related to like computer science or anything IT related, like I didn't study that. But I completely changed my field after university. So first of all, in the university, as I said, my field of both my degrees are completely unrelated. I graduated State Oil Academy, which is like, we had some degrees there which were kind of related to IT, but I didn't take them. So after the university, my first language was PHP that I learned. There was a course, a local course taught by one just regular freelance developer. He conducted a course. He taught us PHP, some HTML and CSS. Now that I teach myself, I understand that this course wasn't very comprehensive. It wasn't very deep. It was very basic. We learned kind of basic fundamentals of PHP and some HTML and CSS, and I wouldn't say that we could even write a website at the end of that course. So, but back then, as I didn't have any experience, when I finished that course, I thought that I can apply to any job, and they should hire me, and I will have any job in the future. So then there was a period when I was working already after university as a call center operator, and I applied for jobs, got 3 to 4 interviews. Some of them were live coding, some of them had some technical assignments, and I failed all of them. I couldn't pass any of them because I didn't know enough programming, enough PHP, although I passed the course. And yeah, I felt rejected. Back then, there was even a situation at my job. So when I was working as a call center operator, the job was shifts-based. So we had night shift, day shift, and we were working as a pair. So there were 2 operators. And one of my colleagues, he was actually a PHP developer on the side. Like it was like a hobby for him. He had some personal projects, some clients, working as a freelancer, basically. And when I got rejected from those jobs, I was telling him about the situation, and he told me that, okay, it's fine. Maybe you are not ready yet. Maybe you have something to learn still, but try to improve your skills while you wait for the right moment. Try to write a simple calculator app in PHP. And back then, I couldn't even Google for the ready solution that had a calculator. So I tried for myself. I don't know, I spent maybe several days trying to figure out how to write a calculator in PHP. I couldn't do it. That was also kind of like a shift in my mind that, oh, okay, maybe I cannot do that. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe you have to have like a proper education in that field, and you have to learn so many things just to be able to work in IT as a developer, let's say. Even as a front-end developer, back-end developer, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it was a misconception of mine, of course. back then, but it felt very real. And I stopped trying for some time, for like almost a year. And then after some time passed, I wanted to try once more. So I got referred to one more course by my former colleague, who's actually here with us today, Oruj, my friend. So he referred me to another course, which was a JavaScript course. Yeah, and they were teaching backend development as well and mobile development with React Native. So as I already knew web development, kinda, or at least I thought so, I decided to take React Native path. And it wasn't actually a course, even it was more like a boot camp for 5 months, like every 5 days a week for 4 hours. We would go there, have some lectures, have some lessons, have some practical exams, projects, teamwork, hackathons, and stuff like that. So like 5 months of very intense work and preparation in JavaScript, TypeScript, and, well, React Native. So yeah, when I was done with that, it gave me a lot of things that I learned. I wasn't alone there. I had a teammate whom I had a good connection with, and we actually learned together. We learned a lot from each other, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But yeah, after that, I got a job there because there was it was a program, bootcamp-based program. You finish that, and if you finish it successfully, you get a job. So I got a job there, worked for 2 years there, and then the company got closed, and I went on the market, applied at a job at Andersen, and yeah, 4 years later, here I am, standing here and conducting this meetup. Nowadays, I actually still have my recording from my interview at Andersen here. And every time to this day, and I think that will last probably forever, I look back at the recording. There were 2 interviews. It was English interview, like English check, language checkup, and then a technical interview. And I look back at it and I cringe every time from my answers, from the way I present myself, from the way I talk about things, about my experience, about everything pretty much. But yeah, it just shows that as time goes by, you improve. And when you look back at yourself, at your past self, you see the improvement. So, okay, now that you know a bit about me, let's continue with our agenda. Firstly, let's talk about things that actually matter for you and things that you should pay attention to when developing in your career. So key competences. Okay, first of all, usually what we see is the division to hard skills and soft skills. It is a topic for discussion. Some say that hard skills are more important. Some say that soft skills are more important. Some say that you can go with your career without even improving your soft skills and just improving your hard skills, which I don't think is true. I believe that these are equally important. Of course, there are some positions when you might require a bit more development in your hard skills than soft skills, and vice versa. But in general, you should pay attention to both, because both help you progress in your journey in their own way. So, okay, but we are starting with hard skills. First point that I want to mention, practice beats theory. So that was one of the things that I saw in the bootcamp that I was, and later when I tried to learn something new after that. Don't get me wrong, you should not ignore theory, definitely, because theory is needed, at least for interviews. Like when you go to apply for a job, you get most of the time you get asked about some theoretical questions. Of course, there are some practical interviews, there are some technical assignments, but most of the time you get asked theoretical questions. So you should know your theory. You should know, if you apply for a job, you should know what you're talking about. But if you want to learn something, you can read tens of books. You can watch hundreds of hours of tutorials on YouTube. And when you think you know everything and you sit down to actually create something, let's say if we are talking about React, for example, and you sit down to create a website with React. You feel like you don't know anything. You're blind. Your mind just goes blank. Sorry. Is it because you don't remember things that you learned? No, you remember. You have memory. You memorized everything, but you need practice in order to, apart from memorization, understand what you learned. So you start with theory, but then you always continue with practice. So create some projects, participate in some hackathons. What also helps is gathering in teams and learning not alone, but with someone, because learning alone is a bit more difficult. Right, so the next point, the foundation beats the framework. Okay, so this is also a very important point, because I see a lot of, well, not a lot, several developers that I interact with, junior developers, that try to pursue every new shiny technology that they see. If we're talking about like frameworks, for like pretty much every language, I guess, has their frameworks, right? If we take JavaScript, it's like tons of them, every day new framework, like React, Next, Vue, Angular, and other frameworks in other languages as well. Those frameworks, they come and go. Like before React, we had Angular, for example, which dominated the market. Then came React. Nowadays, we also have Vue.js, which also is also kind of huge. But they come and go. What you should focus on is the foundation that those frameworks are built on top. So if we take React as an example, it uses JavaScript on the hood, right? So if you are using React, you should have a great understanding of JavaScript, how it works. Any other programming language, take Python with Django, or take Java with Spring Boot, or anything else that you can think of. What you should have is a solid understanding of the foundation of the programming language, of its principles, how it works, how you should use it. You should not question yourself when you work in the framework. When you get to the framework part, which you try to learn, you should not have questions about the programming language that underlies it. You should have a solid understanding to be able to use it correctly and to your advantage. Okay, next point that we have, clean code over clever code. Of course, some of those points relate probably only to developers, but some of them are more generic, let's say, and can be applied to other fields as well. This one, of course, we are talking about writing code. So there is, let's say, bad behavior or bad habit that I have caught myself doing as well during my journey, that you think that if you, let's say you implement some feature, right? You write some code, and you think that this code for a feature of this size, which is big, should be complex, should be complicated, like it should be big in size and so on and so forth. But the reality is that the simpler your solution is, the better, both for you and for your teammates and for your future colleagues and for your future self as well. We will talk about that point a bit later. But yeah, do not try to overcomplicate things. Again, I'm talking about code here, but I think it applies to pretty much everything, pretty much to every part of our job. Whatever you do, do not try to overcomplicate things. Make things as simple as possible. Of course, without compromising the performance or the solution itself. But if you can, simplify things. There is no benefit in overcomplicating. This is a very important point for me, because I have seen a lot of cases of junior developers, again, with whom I interacted with. They think that Git version control, because all of us use it, is not that important at all. Like, you can just ignore it. Like, why do I need it? I have some graphic interface that will do everything for me. Like, I push some changes, pull some changes, and that's it. In reality, this is the tool that you will be using, okay, not as much as your programming language or framework, of course, but pretty much for the entirety of your career, you will be using that several times a day. And you will use that to do some important things. There's this meme that goes around developers about pushing to production and breaking like production code. I've done it. It's bad. It's a bad thing, but yeah, you move on and you learn from things. So you should pay attention to this as early on as possible, because when you're just starting to learn, when you're just starting your journey, it's easy to spend some time to learn some things that take time, for example, like Git or like fundamentals of your programming language. 5 years later or 3 years later, when you're deep into the project and you have some tasks to do, let's say, you won't have time to read about how arrays work or how for loop works or how version control works, and you will be just stuck there with an issue that you don't know how to resolve. Because it starts with pushing and pulling, which are simple operations, but then it comes to merging, rebasing, and branches, cherry picking, and stuff like that. So it's a bit complicated. Okay, the last point about hard skills is debugging and problem solving. Okay, I think it speaks for itself. I personally used to dislike the debugging process. I dislike having some errors or some mistakes in my project. So I worked, I saw some issue, something broke, and I got frustrated and tried to move on from it. The reality is that you learn from those situations, maybe even more than you learn from when you just sit down and try to read something. Because while you try to debug an issue, you read about stuff, you learn something new, you solve the issue, you would remember this solution, and you would like the how it works, the part how it works, will be better setting in your brain after you solve an issue. Okay, I think I should move a bit faster. Yeah, so that's just a thought. When I started, I thought senior developers just wrote perfect code. Turns out they just Google faster and know which Stack Overflow answer not to trust. We'll talk about that a bit later as well. Okay, soft skills. First soft skill that I want to talk about is reliability. There's actually a speech of a public speaker that I want to mention. I think his name is Simon Sinek. I always forget his name, but it doesn't matter. He's an entrepreneur or businessman, and he does public speeches. So in one of his speeches, it's just a part of it, he talks about, or he doesn't. Можно обновить презентацию, просто страничку обновить. Просто презентацию обновить. С той же ссылки открыть. Да. Да, просто там обновление было. Можно или уже поздно? Okay, so reliability. So there just was a table that I wanted to show you. So they conducted the research in America. You may have heard about it. It's called Navy SEALs. So there are Navy forces, and among those Navy forces, there's a team of elite soldiers called Navy SEALs. So it is one of the probably most efficient, most high-performing teams in the world. Like, it's a group of elite soldiers. And during that research, they asked those team members, how do you pick your teammates? Like, who do you pick to be your teammate? How do you measure that? And they drew a graph. I had it here, but I will explain it to you. So there's a graph of dependency of a performance from trust. So the dependency of performance from trust. It is obvious that everyone would want someone of high performance and high trust in their team. And by the way, the performance is what we call hard skills, right? The trust is what we call soft skills. So everyone would want someone of high performance and high trust in their team. And nobody would want someone of low performance and low trust in their team. What they found out during that research is that they would much rather prefer someone of medium performance of high trust, sometimes even someone of low performance and high trust, because that's relative to the teams, over someone of high performance and low trust, because those are usually toxic teammates, and you don't want that in a team, because that breaks the mood and your team doesn't move forward very well. So, which shows that, okay, you definitely should have great hard skills. You definitely should improve them. You definitely should work on them. But your soft skills matter almost as much, maybe even sometimes even more, as I said. So reliability, communication skills. What communication skills are is definitely not the ability to like create contact with someone or make friends. It is a skill to communicate your thoughts. So we work in teams, most of us. Of course, there are some situations when you work alone as a single developer, just without even some backend colleague, for example, just one single front-end developer. Or maybe if you're a freelancer, you work alone. But most of us in a corporate environment who work in teams. Working in teams involves a lot of communications. You have a lot of meetings, and as much as you go further in your career, the amount of meetings just increases. It never drops. And you have more and more calls during the day. So your communication skills definitely matter. You should work on them. Punctuality, that speaks for itself, I think. It's very important in a team environment, not being late to calls, not like even something small, again, like being late to a call. Nothing will break. Like if you miss a call or you are late for a couple of minutes, nothing breaks, nothing catastrophic happens. But it leads to someone not trusting you anymore. Honesty is just kind of similar to reliability. Like people should trust you with your word. Like if you say something, they know that you mean it, that you are going to deliver, that you're going to do what you said, or that you have done what you said. It is also connected to our topic of interviews, which we will mention a bit later. And teamwork, of course, the ability to work in teams. That's also connected to a point where I talked previously in hard skills, that you should attend to hackathons, gather in teams to create some projects, because it also improves your ability to work in teams, because you are getting used to work in teams, because working alone and working with someone or with several people is a different thing. Soft skills are like Wi-Fi. You don't notice when they're good, but when they're missing, everyone suffers. Okay, so we talked about things that matter. Now let's talk about learning. So here I will mention some tips and advice, pieces of advice, which you can utilize to learn basically in your journey. Okay, first, master the fundamentals. We talked about that. I will not focus too much on that. You should definitely learn the underlying thing first. Of course, without going too deep. Like you can go too deep and learn assembly or machine code if you are interested in it, if it's your hobby. But what I'm talking about is just the underlying programming language. At least learn that. Focus on one thing, then expand. It's also a very important point. Now, of course, there are some situations, like it depends on the situation. For example, in our trainee program, you learn one technology, then you are given another technology to learn. So without even probably finishing the first one, you are expected to learn something else as well. Of course, or sometimes in your career, or let's say you started to learn backend development and you thought, okay, it's not for me. I want to learn, I don't know, cloud engineering or front-end development or something else. Of course, then it does not apply to those situations. But in general, you started, let's say, backend development. Okay, focus on that, master it, learn as much as you can, be a professional in that field. And then you can switch, or then you can add something to your stack, rather than learning it to some extent, then switching to something else, learning that to some extent, and then switching to something else. And in the end, you know something from like several fields, but you are not professional enough in either of them. Okay, learn to read documentation, not just tutorials. This is also an important point, I think, because this is also something that I see in junior developers. They do not like to read documentation, because of course nowadays we have ChatGPTs and Claudes and Geminis and stuff. You can just throw a question in it and it will spit out the answer. First of all, it's not always right. You should always double check. But this reduces your ability to digest information as it is given to you. because those AIs and, I don't know, just tutorials, they give you maybe not the entirety of the information, maybe they give you the information as they present it, right? But then there's a documentation, and when you end up in it, you're just lost because you are not used to reading it. Because usually it's written like a boring document. It's not fun to check it out, but you should definitely try. Build real projects, not just courses. If we talk about learning from tutorials, and those are actually important to do, like you should not ignore them. You should not just sit and read and then try to use it in some pet project, because it's not that easy if you don't know what you're doing. But there are some tutorials that teach you things, again, like in theory, they just talk about stuff. Maybe they have some presentation like I do, but we're not learning to code today, of course, where they just teach you things from theory perspective, right? But there are some tutorials that try to, or they actually do, create some projects during the time of the tutorial. If you find those tend to be more efficient in terms of learning. Like they tend to be more useful for you. Do not just watch it, follow it. Repeat what it does, do everything as it does. You will encounter some errors, maybe some mistakes, but move along with the tutorial. And in the end, you will have a project. You will have a working project that, okay, you haven't built it yourself, but you saw the structure, you saw the flow, how it is done. Later, you can apply some of those steps to your own project. And then, like, it's like a Kickstarter. Okay, read more code and do not be afraid to learn from it. What I mean here is that you should definitely spend a considerable amount of time reading others' code. It's a good practice to, let's say you're working on a project, you have some teammates, they create some pull requests that your team lead just checks, approves, and you ignore them. No, actually go ahead, open that pull request, try to read it, try to check what other developers do. Not only your teammates, but from the internet as well. There are tons of open source projects, and they are also a great source of knowledge. You can check how things are written by other developers. That also helps you progress. Okay, write code that others can read. There's a saying that goes, pretty much everyone can write a code that a machine understands, because you can just copy the piece of code from the documentation, paste it somewhere, and like a machine that is supposed to understand it will understand it. But not everyone can write a code that other developers can understand. And that is actually, I would say, maybe more important, because again, we're working in a team environment, right? Even if you think about it, even your future self needs to be able to understand your code, because tons of times it happened, you write your code, half a year later, and it's not like 10 years, half a year later, like 3 months later, you come back to that code, you take a look at it, and you do not understand why on God's earth you have done what you've done. Back then, yeah, you knew, but now you're clueless, and you spend, I don't know, 3 hours trying to digest the piece of code that you yourself written, right? Let alone some other developer that comes to your project, let's say, and he tries to understand what the hell is it, right? So always try to, at least again, put yourself in a situation of other developer. Look at your code that you've written and check, would I be able to understand it if I just joined this team, and if that was the first time that I took a look at that project and that piece of code. Learn to learn from feedback. So feedback is very important. I myself used to think that especially negative feedback is something bad. Like when someone criticized my decision or the piece of code that I wrote, or I don't know, the way that I spoke, or the way that I presented some piece of information, this decision that I made, it made me frustrated, and I thought that, okay, I did something bad. Why did I do that? I don't know anything. I need to learn, blah, 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 and so forth, and so on and so forth. But it's not that. Of course, there are some toxic teammates that we spoke of before, and there are definitely situations when they give you some toxic feedback, which in that situation, what you should do is to focus on the thing, like take something, the feedback itself from the situation, because you can learn from that feedback. You can learn what you need to improve, what you need to work on, but ignore the toxic part. But most of the time, our teammates just want to, like, for example, some developers that are that have more experience than us, right? They just want to give some feedback in order to correct some situation, let's say, to avoid some difficulty in the future in a team, for example. So definitely do not avoid getting feedback. You can even try asking feedback. That's also great. If you are working with someone that has more experience than you, ask for feedback. It's not an issue. Teach what you learn. Now, this is a very controversial point, and it's very important to understand it correctly. In Baku, we have this difficult situation that I notice usually, that there are tons of courses that teach some programming languages or frameworks where they take someone that have just finished the course and they put it as the teacher who teaches the next students, right? Which is, I think, is wrong, because if someone doesn't have experience in what they teach, it shouldn't be done. But okay, it's a topic for another meetup. What you can do, for example, let's say you have a friend who also wants to start their career in IT and you are learning Java, for example. Try teaching that friend the Java language. You will also learn from it, because when you teach, you encounter things that you haven't noticed before, because you understand that, okay, that person doesn't know anything. I need to explain it in simple terms, and I need to cover every possible scenario so that they understand it correctly and they can use it later, so that it doesn't harm them, and so on and so forth. So that's a really good practice to also learn. Embrace being a beginner. What I mean by that is what I mentioned when I was talking about the Git version control. So while you are a beginner, you have a ton of time to focus on what's important. Actually learn, build the foundation, so that later, when you work with that foundation, you can use it and you can just improve your skills, rather than sit after 2 years again, deep in the project and trying to learn the thing that you should have learned 5 years ago or so. Don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. That happened to me, because when I started with the JavaScript part of my journey, not with PHP, but with JavaScript, I was 20, I think 4 or 5, and I had some teammates who were going simultaneously, like with me in parallel, and they were, I don't know, 19, 20 years old. And all that I was thinking about was that, okay, I am late. Why didn't I start 5 years earlier, and so on and so forth. Of course, it doesn't apply to everyone, but sometimes that thought occurs in your mind. Do not try to compare yourself to others. The only person that you should compare yourself to is yourself from the past. So, like, try to look back at yourself a year ago. Did you know things that you know today? Were you professional enough as you are today? If you take a look at yourself back to the past and you see that, yes, you have improved, you have developed your skills, you have expanded your knowledge, then it's great, then you're moving in the right direction. Right. Some common mistakes and misconceptions that developers have at the beginning of their journey, and I had all of them pretty much. Not asking for help soon enough. I had that feeling when I was just starting, that if you ask for help, then it means that you don't know. Then it means that the person that you ask for help might think that you're not professional enough, that you shouldn't be here, that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. In reality, it's not like that. It's not that deep. You should not go too deep into these thoughts. You should definitely do the opposite. Like, do not wait until it's too late to ask for help. Because if you wait, for example, let's say you are working on a task and you don't know how to do it, right? And you spend a week on that, and they expect that, okay, in a week, that task should be done even by someone that doesn't know what he's doing, right? But after a week, you come back and say, okay, I need help with that. That looks kind of weird. So, but if you ask for help soon enough, like you spend a day and you see that, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I have no clue what I should be doing next. Ask for help, because developers, not the toxic ones, again, usually tend to be very helpful and they'd be happy to assist you. Copy-pasting code without understanding it. I think a lot of us do that. I do that sometimes, and I catch myself doing that, which I shouldn't be doing. It is okay to get someone else's code, to use it. It's not like a piece of intellectual property. It kind of is, but like it isn't. You can definitely, again, as I said earlier, check out some open source projects, take some decisions, some solutions from there, because the people that wrote those projects probably are more experienced than you are, and than I am as well, than any of us are. And it is completely fine. But when you take some piece of code that you think you need it, try to understand it before putting it in your project. Even better, instead of copying it, try to sit there, understand what it does, and then apply it manually yourself. You will learn more from it. This point applies to starting working on a new project. So you will eventually either change your current project or start working on a new project. If you do so, try to approach it deep enough. What I mean by that, usually some developers, okay, they start, okay, here's the task, I'm taking it, I will start working in it, and so on and so forth. The top thing that I will do is probably, okay, check the code base and how things are written. No, try to check some commits, some pull requests that have been closed in the past, I don't know, half a year, 3 months, the longest that you can go. Read some pull requests, read some comments from team leads, read some comments from the reviewers, read some comments in the task descriptions. Check out the history, like at least, for example, I don't know, a couple of latest weeks. It would give you enough context to start with this project correctly. Communication solves most problems. Okay, it's also tied up with all the things that we talked about communication. Most of the time, again, okay, at least half of the issues that we encounter in teams, they happen because of the lack of the communication. Someone didn't tell the other teammate that he has done something there, and it broke everything, for example. It happens every day on every project. So always remember that communication is important, because you're working in teams, you're not working alone. Imposter syndrome never fully goes away. Yes, it is the thing that you probably start feeling from the first day, and then you think that it will go away, but it never fully goes away. You always think that you are not good enough. You always think that you don't know what you need to know. You always think that you're not capable enough. Just ignore it and continue with your journey. And the last point here, your career is a marathon, not a sprint. Be careful about your burnout. Yeah, that's also an important point. As much as I admire focus and not procrastinating, and you should definitely spend considerable amount of time on your learning, on improving your skills, on practice and stuff like that. Do not forget that you're a human being. Like, you should take care of your brain, you should take care of your burnout, you should avoid it as much as possible. So definitely pay enough attention to that. Okay, and I think that's the last big section that we have, interviews. Nowadays that I conduct quite a lot of interviews myself, I notice some patterns, some common, maybe mistakes, some common things that developers usually tend to do on interviews that doesn't portray them in the very best light. First, about hard skills. The first point that I have here is think out loud. I cannot stress enough the importance of this point, because I see so many situations when for example, I ask a question. It might be a complicated question, okay. You might not know the answer to it, and that especially applies to a live coding part. when you have live coding, right? Okay, if you know the answer, that may be fine, okay. But if you don't know it and you're thinking about the solution, do not sit in silence. Think out loud. It portrays you in a better light, because sometimes, like, interviewers do not expect a solution. They expect to hear your thought process. They expect to hear how you think, what you know about the thing that you are doing right now. For example, you're writing an algorithm to filter some items from an array. What do you know about arrays? How the loop works, how you're taking items, how you're writing your conditions, stuff like that, and so on and so forth. So definitely think out loud. Like, try to talk your solution process. Be honest about what you don't know. That is also a very important point, because there were several situations when, for example, you ask a question on an interview, right? And it is pretty obvious if a candidate doesn't know what he is talking over, what they are talking about. It is pretty obvious, right? And they think that it is better to cover that, to pretend that, okay, I know, and just give some maybe generic answer. No, if you do not know something, just let the interviewer know. It would make the following part much less awkward, because sometimes it gets into a situation when 2-3 questions deep and the candidate starts talking about completely different things, and it's not good for you as a candidate. And you are expected to know about the things you mentioned yourself. Yeah, that's also a very important point. So if you describe some concept, let's say, and you mention, I can give you an example from JavaScript, because that's what I'm working with. So let's say I'm asking you about requests to some backend API, right? And you mention promises. I will ask you about promises. When talking about promises, you mentioned the event loop. I will ask you about the event loop, right? So whatever you mention in your answers, the interviewer will probably expect that you know about it because you mentioned it, and they will ask about it. So either prepare yourself to answer or do not mention things that you don't know. You still might get asked about those, because some of them are important things that all of us ask on interviews. But at least you will prepare yourself. Okay, soft skills. The first point about the STAR method, you will learn about it when you prepare to soft skills interview. Let's say there's a method called STAR of describing a situation. It's an abbreviation, a situation. I don't remember the second. What's the second? Action and resolution, I think, something like that. I don't remember the abbreviation itself, but it's a method to describe a situation, basically. Improve your presentation skills. So that also connects to your communication skills. Presentation skills do not only apply on interviews. So you do not only use them on interviews. In teams, for example, you work as a developer, you applied some solution on the project, right? You added some dependency, I don't know. You will probably present it to your team, right? And you should be able to do it both correctly and good enough in terms of delivering the information. Like, everyone after that meeting should be able to understand what that dependency is, what it does, how it works, what it implies. Be a human, not a robot. This point is connected to a story that I have from my experience. On one of the projects that I was working on, we had an open position for a senior React Native developer. And so we were expecting several candidates to come and try. It was an Asian project. So the project itself was from Singapore. And we had a colleague of mine from Andersen who was a M3 level React Native developer, almost senior level developer. And there were 1 or 2, I think, junior level developers, right? So the obvious thing here is that the middle developer, who is almost a senior developer, knows better. Like they know much more. Or, okay, not much more, but considerably more than a junior developer, right? That's what we all thought, and that is probably what was the situation. But what happened there was on the interview itself, and I watched both interviews. Like I watched the interview with the junior and with the middle developer as well. What happened was that junior developer was able to build a rapport, which was much better. Like the situation was very calm. He was joking himself when the interviewer joked around. He laughed. He was able to build a connection, right? He was able to have a small talk at the beginning and the end, ask a couple of questions. He was really calm and focused. And in the end, they took the junior developer, not the M3 level React Native developer, who was almost a senior, but they took a junior developer because of the human connection. Because in teams, again, we are not working alone, we're working in teams. So as much as your hard skills are important, as much your soft skills are also important. So you should be able to present yourself like this. Ask questions back. You always get the information to ask some questions to the interviewers as well, because that's also important. That shows your interest in a company or in a position, for example. Yeah, and pretty much everything that I mentioned, your attitude, how you handle unknowns, which is also connected to things that you don't know, so how you handle those, or how you handle some cases when you can't solve a task that you are given, for example, and your energy and ownership, of course, as well. Remember that interviews aren't tests of perfection. They're just conversations about potential. Of course, maybe most interviews are just a series of theoretical questions that you should be able to answer to. And I think it's a bad, not a practice, but tradition that we have in IT development world, that interviews are just like, what is a for loop, what it does, how it works, and you should be able to answer everything like it's written in the documentation, for example, which I think is incorrect. I much prefer interviews where you talk about some solutions, some features that you've implemented, some projects that you worked on, some technologies that you used, right? Because that shows your experience. What is useful? What's so useful about like memorizing the entirety of the documentation of the programming language? But anyway, that's the situation. Okay, and that pretty much concludes our today's session. We'll have a Q&A session in a minute. Some closing thoughts. The thing that I wanted to mention, yes, that these are like some general thoughts, but what I wanted to say is that you will probably never feel fully ready. This is connected to the imposter syndrome as well. There is no feeling like you know everything and you are fully ready to like consider yourself a complete developer. Like it's not happening. Every day there are some new technologies. Every day there are some new things, new updates, new stuff coming out that you should be able to learn and that you should be able to catch, right? So don't wait for that perfect moment when you feel ready. If you can start with something, just start. Just check it out. Maybe it works for you. Maybe you will understand that it doesn't work for you and you should switch, I don't know, technologies, switch domains even entirely, or professions. So do not wait. Right, and some info about our traineeship programs. You can scan the QR code and get much more information, but basically in every city where we have an office, there are some trainee programs in areas that are described here, and in some countries there are even more or maybe less, so you should check the QR code that is on the screen. And connected to the point of feedback, if you have some thoughts, if you enjoyed it today, or maybe you have some thoughts that you think can improve the situation, definitely scan the QR code. I will be reading every single of your feedback, and we'll try to take something from it. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it and had a good time. if you have any questions. Thank you. If you have any questions, let's hear them. If not, then.
So could you speak about more about STAR method?
Yeah, so it's a method it's a good method of describing the situation. I don't remember the abbreviation exactly, but it's a way of dividing the situation into 4 steps. So first you describe the situation. Oh, I remember, the A stands for action. So you describe the situation first. Let's say, for example, I'm talking about some issue that I had and how I resolved it on one of the projects that I was working for. And I'm on an interview and I want to present this situation. So if I were to use the STAR method, I would talk about the situation, so describe the situation in like 1 or 2 sentences. Then you say the action, so like 1, 2 sentences about the action that you have taken or the team has taken. Then it's the STAR action. Okay, I don't remember the T. The A is action, and the R is result. So at the end, you describe in a couple of sentences the result. So what happened, what you learned from it, what happened after that, how you resolved it, like the way you resolved it, how it affected. Maybe you have some results based on numbers. That would also be helpful. So yeah, it's just a good, like a little framework to talk about situations from your experience on interviews.
So it's kind of something like that.
Sorry?
It's kind of something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, I think then we are done. Okay.
So we also have a few online questions. Can I ask them, please?
Okay, sure.
1 second. So, does Andersen taking students for internships?
Yes, Andersen does. Specifically in our location in Baku, the IDEA program will start sometime next year. So stay tuned for that information. But in other locations, Andersen has an active program that takes trainees, which you can check from one of the previous slides, I guess. So yeah, from here.
Okay, thank you. And I wonder, if I apply to the trainee program and fail, will I have the chance to apply again in the future?
Yes, you would definitely have the chance, if something goes wrong, after some time, to apply again. Thank you. So, okay, yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
Is it possible, for example, to relocate from Baku office to either Kazakhstan or any countries that has Andersen?
Yes, any countries that have Andersen offices, so like you mentioned, Kazakhstan, for example, Poland or other, yes, that's possible.
And do you also understand in Baku accept no for training more like for open roles?
Yes, definitely, but there should be an active position for hiring. Then you can get hired. So I, for example, went through the hiring instead of the traineeship. So yeah, that's also possible.
And what do you think about Andersen program? Would you recommend this company to your close friend?
Yes, definitely. I am recommending it to my friends and acquaintances always because I think it's a great place to earn a lot of experience because of the specificity of the company. Like it's an outstaff company. And yeah, so there's a lot to learn here. You see a lot of projects, a lot of teams, a lot of technologies. So yeah, would definitely recommend. Thank you.
So, what technical and soft skills would you recommend developers focus on for long-term success?
I would say that those are pretty much the same skills that we talked about today, from the soft skills and hard skills section in the beginning. So those are the ones that you should pay attention to. So those hard skills and the soft skills as well from here. Thank you. Okay. So we're done. Okay. Thank you very much.